Welcome back to the big show. My next guest, the great Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, back on the James Show. Keep it going for Alan West. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, it's good to be with you, James. Thanks so very much. Happy New Year, my friend.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Okay, so it's very disappointing because you think wildfire, the California situation going on, that wouldn't be political. But it certainly looks that way now. How much do you think is to blame for the officials in California, Los Angeles County, and the state level versus, hey, man, this is just a wildfire. It happens, and it's just a stroke of bad luck?
Well, wildfires do happen, but I think that when you look at the forestry mitigation procedures and processes, those have not been attended to for whatever environmental reasons. When you look at the dams that have been broken down, when you look at the reservoirs that are dry so that you had fire hydrants with no water, when you look at the focus of the LA County Fire Department and their 3 senior members more so on LGBTQIA plus LMNOP stuff and DEI, and the fact that they got rid of firefighters who did not take the COVID shot and have not sought to bring them back. And then they sold excess firefighting equipment to Ukraine. So you have a cacophony of failures from the state level down to the local level, and it results in what looks like a combat zone right now.
I didn't even think about the firefighters that got let go because of the clot shot there. Just add that to my list of complaints.
Yeah, I mean, and so you have to look at the policies thereof. And so when you think about the decisions that were made by Gavin Newsom at the state level, look, President Trump was out there with Gavin Newsom during the last wildfire. He talked about those mitigation procedures. He talked about clearing up the underbrush. And you have forests in different parts of the world, but we don't see these catastrophic events like what we see in California. So it does come back to the policies.
Well, we have the fire chief there saying she didn't know that they were out of water. And so she's blaming the city for not letting her know. Shouldn't a fire chief know whether or not they have water?
Well, if the fire chief is focused on firefighting, yes, they would know that they don't have water. But if the fire chief is more so focused on, diversity and equity and inclusion, and I just recently saw where one of the leaders in the LA County Firefighting Department said that, if I have to be concerned about picking up a man and carrying him out from a fire, well, chances are that man was in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's not the purpose. You're supposed to have standards, and you can't lower standards just to make the equity and inclusion policies come to fruition. So, again, there are a lot of people that need to step down, and I know that if California, which the federal government, FEMA, should come in and help them out. But there has to be some change in personnel. There has to be some change in policies. The federal taxpayers, the American taxpayers, should not come in if there's no change in what we saw happen. In other words, you're just going to throw good money after another bad problem.
Well, that's another thing I find super frustrating is I'm trying not to be political about a natural disaster. A fire doesn't care if you're on team red or team blue. But every complaint I hear about the situation, including the insurance situation, they're like, well, can you believe State Farm dropped all these people? Yeah, they dropped them like 10 months ago. And it turns out that they were right to drop them. The private sector, look at this. They're like, oh, no, we're not we can't afford the insurance under these conditions for these people for this premium. And it turns out, in my opinion, they weren't like terrible to the state of California. The state of California was terrible to them and ran them off.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And yes, maybe we should look at having better procedures and processes so we don't have these state-by-state mini fiefdoms. But again, I hate to, like you say, talk about politics, but you have a supermajority of Democratic control out there in California, in the state assembly and the state senate, the governor's mansion, and there in LA County and throughout that coastal area. So I think it's time that people start looking at, okay, what are the behind-the-scenes reasons why we keep having these forest fires? We know that we're going to, the season that comes about.
Oh, no, Alan, it's climate change. That's why they keep having the fires.
Dadgummit, you're right.
Yeah.
Stupid me. It's not the Santa Ana winds. It's not the fact that they have a dry season, although they have record rainfall, but they still did not have water. But the Delta smelt is very well protected.
Oh, thank goodness. Is there going to be any effect on the voting patterns of the people who just had their entire lives burned down by these terrible policies?
Well, I think that's one of the things that Gavin Newsom is trying to look at. He wants those people to, stay there and to rebuild their houses. And now he's lifting a lot of those building code restrictions and regulations. But here's the thing. I mean, if these people are going to seek to up and move to, let's say, Texas, remember the people that instituted those policies that caused your house to burn down, and they did not have water, so you couldn't even turn on your own water hydrant and use your hose. So, I hope you see a change. I know that Donald Trump won more counties in California than Kamala Harris did, but guess what? All of those coastal counties and areas went to Kamala Harris, and guess whose houses just got burned down?
Alan West, I know you're the chair of the Dallas County GOP, but what's the other organization you're working with right now?
Yeah, I'm the executive director of the American Constitutional Rights Union, and we're always focused on our constitutional rights and making sure that our civil liberties are protected.
Love it. All right. How do people listen and get involved?
You go to theacru.org. You can also go to the dallasgop.org and see what we're doing here at the Dallas County Republican Party. Municipal level elections are coming up in May, be here before we know it. And this is about city council, school board seats, mayoral elections. That'll be our focus.
Love it. All right. I appreciate your time. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West on The James Show.
Thank you, James. God bless.
Look at that. All right. And coming up next, we're going to address the pressing issue. Whose fault is it? Shouldn't the fire chief know if there's not any water in the hydrants? Because she's saying, well, that's not my department. I'm not in charge of the water. Well, shouldn't you at least know? And it hadn't really affected us that much until now. Now, all of a sudden, guess what? We have Texas resources that are going to fight the fire. And I was hearing some people on the Casey Bartholomew show earlier today on WBAP had a great discussion on whether or not they were cool with that. And I can see a little gray area in that. I can see the side of the discussion that says, listen, I know they don't politically agree with us on many very important issues, but they're still our neighbors. They're still fellow Americans. And even though they're petulant and bad talk and run their mouths a lot, we still have to do the right thing and be the adult in the room and help out our neighbors in their time of need. And then there's the other side of the discussion. It's like, excuse me. I mean, not only do we politically agree with them, these are people who voted to boycott Texas and do travel bans to Texas and divest from Texas. And, they don't just bad talk. They actually, there's actions where, they take swings at us. And so why would we help these people? Maybe we should say, next time you want help in a fire, maybe you should not boycott us for the years leading up to the fire. Maybe you shouldn't have travel bans. Maybe you shouldn't act like we're so bad that you can't even have your state officials be in our state on the taxpayer dime. There's an argument to be said for that. I'm still just baffled that, number one, it sounds like the LAFD thinks when it comes to fighting firefighters, it's more important to have lesbians than water. And then secondly, the idea that the fire chief is sitting there telling the media with a straight face, nah, man, I didn't know we were out of water. What do you mean you didn't know? Well, they didn't tell me. Well, there's not like a rule that says, hey, there's a fire reservoir. When it runs out of water, we should tell the fire chief. Here's number one. How about you make that rule? Can we make that rule now? If you ever run out of water, can you let the fire chief know? Aren't you supposed to ask, though? Aren't you supposed to test these things? Aren't you supposed to be the one that says, hey, do we have water? If not, why? And what can we do about it? It's bizarre. Some of this just doesn't seem real. What do you think? 800-288-9227. This is Bill in Fort Worth. You're on WBAP. What do you think?
Thank you for taking my call. I think we need a class action lawsuit. And while their legislature is up in Sacramento is going to hand out $25 million to battle Trump with, they don't even care. This is proof that the Democrat Party doesn't give a flip about human life. They don't. It's all political. If we need to send our lawyers. We've got a bunch of trial lawyers here, and they need to go to California and sue the living heck out of them. And all those proceeds those attorneys get, we can tax here in Texas.
Well, hang on. Can I just put a little addendum on what you're saying? Because there's a lot of people who hear you and think, well, that's just hyperbole, and he's intentionally misunderstanding the intentions of the people of California. So I'm not saying you're wrong, Bill. I just need to clear it up so I don't get people complaining because they're just intentionally misunderstanding what you're saying. Number one, Bill is only half right. They're not concerned about the well-being of the lowest among us right now. But that doesn't mean they're not empathetic. They're just empathetic. They're telling you they're doing this. We have to do all these environmental restrictions, the CO2, the plastic straws, because they're concerned about the plight of poor people 100 years from now. So there's empathy, but you're right. It's not for us. And if you're going to destroy the lives of people now in order to better the lives of poor people 100 years from now, well, then you just gave yourself blanket excuse to hurt people with no consequences, because there's not going to be any retribution 100 years from now if your predictions don't come true. And that's exactly what the communists said. That's what they said in Russia. That's what they said in Maoist China. That's what they said everywhere they've gone out and just wiped out a generation of wealth and prosperity. No, we're doing this to help poor people in the future, Bill.
Are you saying that you're talking about the environmental laws that they've enacted?
Well, dude, that's their excuse for everything.
No.
Yes.
That's a fundraiser. That's a fundraiser is all that is. That's fake. They haven't done anything to help this planet.
Okay, so
they fly jets all over. This whole thing, this global warming, go back 15,000 years and we had glaciers a mile thick. How many human beings were around when all those melted, and now we have Lake Superior, Lake Huron, all the Great Lakes and all were carved out by 10, 15,000 years ago.
Long before we had a Lincoln Navigator. Yeah, I get you. I get it. But explain this class action lawsuit. Who is in the class action, and who are they suing for what?
All the people whose homes were burned to the ground sue the county, the city, the municipalities, the state. Send in lawyers and go after them. Go after these people.
All right, here's my problem with that. If they win, they're going to get money, but where does that money come from? So you have the people of L.A. County suing L.A. County, and in the judgment, the people of L.A. County have to pay the people of L.A. County for the money that the government screwed them out of.
Well, I think President Trump will figure a solution.
Now,
let's let him figure it out.
Bill, I think you're being too nice. I think criminal charges. I think for every neglectful policy that resulted in a house being burned, that's the same thing. That's almost arson. Whatever the involuntary manslaughter version of arson is. There you go. Involuntary arson, arson slaughter, fire slaughter, whatever you call it, property slaughter, something to that effect. I think you're being too nice, Bill. I think there needs to be handcuffs on people and people sent to jail. If the fire chief is right and she didn't know that they were out of water, well, we don't have someone to check that. Whose job is it to tell her? If it's no one's job to tell her, then fire chief, you're fired. You didn't have a process by which people told you you're out of water. You're clearly not qualified for the job. I love your call, Bill. Thank you very much. Here she is, Kristen Crowley. Did the city
of Los Angeles fail you and your department and our city?
It's my job to stand up as a chief and
just answer the question.
Justifiably what the fire department needs to operate to meet the demands of the community.
Did they fail you?
That is our job. And I tell you, that's why I'm here. So let's get us what we need so our firefighters can do their jobs.
Did they fail you?
Yes.
Yeah, was that so hard? Why'd she ask you 3 times? Just say yes the first time. So Kristen Crowley, we didn't have any water, but I don't consider that a failure because we tried really, really hard. Aww.
The question is about the Santa Ynez Reservoir being empty. There's been a lot of questions about that.
Sure. So my stance on this is when a firefighter comes up to a hydrant, we expect there's going to be water. We don't control the water supply. Our firefighters are there to protect lives and property and to make sure that we're properly trained and equipped. That's my position on this. So if there's no water, I don't know how the water gets to the hydrants. Please defer that to DWP or whomever controls that part. But I can tell you the resiliency of our firefighters, if there's no water, they're going to go find water. They're going to figure out a way to do the best they can with what they've got in a very dynamic situation.
No, you still failed. See, this is what it looks like when the participation trophy generation grows up and is put in charge of things. Did you do a good job fighting the fire? No, but we sure did try hard, and that's good enough. No, that's not a good answer. At what point would you admit that you're a failure? That, we tried hard. We didn't have any water and thousands of homes burned. How many thousands of houses and buildings have to burn down before you would say the LAFD was a failure? How many of your neighbors have to die in a fire before you figure you're eligible for a little bit of criticism here? How on earth is anyone supposed to be okay with the fire chief saying she didn't know there wasn't any water. She didn't check at any point. She didn't have any system to make sure that there's water in the hydrants. This is like, if you don't understand how just out to space this is, imagine if we stormed the beaches of Normandy and or maybe the streets of Fallujah more recently. And when we got there, the soldiers didn't have any bullets. Wouldn't someone look at the generals and be like, bro, you didn't think to check if we had bullets? Well, that's not my job. I'm not the bullets guy. It's like you're the general manager at McDonald's and you didn't have any food. Would you consider that a successful day? But the fry cooks, they work so hard. They didn't have any fries. They didn't make any food. But no one told us we were going to be out of food. Well, you don't have a system by which you keep up with food. You don't have like an inventory system. Well, yeah, they knew, but they didn't tell me. So they didn't hide it, or they just didn't tell you. You never thought to check, or maybe have a rule. Yeah, it's that bad. I really don't like the blame game, and I really don't like to insert politics where it just doesn't feel like it belongs. And part of the reason I didn't talk about the California wildfires for most of last week is because people were trying to shoehorn politics in there, and I felt like it was forced. And I think I was wrong on this one. I think politics does deserve a little bit of a discussion there. You heard the LAFD Fire Chief, Kristen Crowley, saying, listen, we didn't have any water, but we tried real hard. So she doesn't consider it a failing effort. The LAFD didn't fail. No, maybe the city leaders or the county leaders failed because the hydrants were dry, but they sure didn't fail. And I feel like this is you could draw a straight line between this and the participation trophy. Because you went out there and you lost 6-0 in the round robin. You didn't even make the second day's tournament playoffs, and you still get a trophy. You're telling the kids, hey, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how terrible you were at your chosen profession, your job. You still did great as long as you tried hard. Well, you and I know that's a farce. But current generation, we raised a lot of these people. And so for a lot of you listening, it's your fault. Now, I know probably not you, but there's someone listening out there that you raised some of these kids. You gave them the participation trophy. When my kids get a participation trophy, they're like, yay. And I'm like, don't get excited. Everybody got one. And I'm not trying to crap on them. I'm just telling them the truth. That's not an accomplishment. Getting last place is not something you should be happy with. It's much less celebrated. Because here we are. This is that ethos applied to the real world. Whether or not you had water, whether or not thousands of homes burned, as long as you tried hard. No, that's not very good. How about you try hard and you have the proper resources and you have the best people in places for the job and you're more concerned about a LAFD fireman being able to actually carry a person out of a building rather than, well, we made some other people feel good about themselves because the person looks like me. That means nothing now, does it? Means nothing when your house is burning. But here she is talking to the local TV station. Kudos to her for being this honest. I just don't know if she knows how bubble-headed this sounds.
Get them water, Chief, because I was with your firefighters and they literally were watching a house burn down with pain in their eyes, not being able to do anything except pull water from a swimming pool to try to save a nearby structure that wasn't burning, and literally watching a house burn to the ground because they had no water.
That's exactly right. But did they continue to work? And did they continue to do what they had to do the best they could with what they had? Yes.
That's not a good answer. That's a terrible answer. Oh, my goodness. So the LAFD, the fire chief, doesn't know whether or not they have water. But I was playing you. I can go back and get it. I was playing you the audio last week where she was so proud because so many of her firemen are gay. Like, hey, I know your house is burning down and I know we don't have any water and I know they're just sitting there looking, but at least they're gay. What? No. This doesn't help. See, firemen need water to put out fires. They don't need lesbians. Now, if a lesbian was there and she had water, that would help too. The more important part is water. And I'm not even like anti-gay. I'm indifferent. If the person holding the hose is male, female, gay, whatever, heck, if we could train a dog to do it. We kind of need the water though. That's not like really fungible. Without water and with houses burning, it is a failed enterprise. I don't care how hard they tried. I don't care how emotionally invested they were in it. And she didn't have any idea. She admits it.
Sandra Endo, one of our anchors, wants to know if the department is advised that the Santa Ynez Reservoir was going to be emptied. Were you aware that there was no water there?
No, we weren't aware of that.
They don't have to advise
Then you're
you?
dumb.
Not that I'm aware of,
You're
no.
fired.
So you had no idea that there wasn't such needed resource?
No, we weren't.
All right. Chief Kristen Crowley, again, Chief of the Los Angeles City Fire Department. Thank you for talking to us. I know it's been a very exhaustive, emotional, and I imagine you're mad, and I imagine you're sad. You may not want to talk about that anger or that disappointment, but I can see it in your eyes. Thank you. Thank you for talking to us.
Look at
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
how at the end of a few minutes, talk to the fire chief about how she just failed over and over at her charge, with thousands of houses burning in the wake of these mistakes and governmental oversights. What was the last 15 seconds of that piece? Nothing but emotional, heartfelt sympathy, empathy, whatever you want to call it, for the fire chief. No criticism there. No, like, oh my God, you dummy, you didn't know if you had any water? Your job's to put out fires and you didn't check if there was any water? Oh my goodness. All right. Either these people in future times are going to continue to suffer under terrible management, or they're going to change their voting patterns. And frankly, whichever path they choose, they're going to deserve what they get after that. Do we still send them help? I'm okay with Texas sending help at our dime, but we can't make this a yearly thing. We can't make this a every year thing. You're going to have to learn how to fight your own fires at some point. Okay, well, this is an extraordinary situation. We'll do this again. But did they send us help when we had our wildfires a couple of years ago? What was that, in 2023? When we were getting all ate up, did they send us help? I don't remember them sending us help. I hadn't really looked into it, but I'd be interested to see how reciprocal this is, or if we're just helping these people out in their time of painful incompetence.